You know, usually when we talk about scientific proof, there is this immediate expectation of massive scale.
Right.
Like you picture a clinical trial with 10,000 people, complex algorithms, standard deviations, and, a final definitive average that tells you exactly how a medication or a therapy works.
Absolutely. We're very trained to look for those huge numbers.
Yeah, exactly. It feels incredibly solid because we are so conditioned to trust the crowd. We just sort of assume that if we gather enough data points, the messy, unpredictable reality of human behavior will somehow just average out into a clean mathematical truth.
Well, that is the dominant model for most of the scientific community. I
Yeah.
mean, we look for large sample sizes because there's comfort in numbers.
Right.
It allows researchers to kind of cancel out those individual anomalies.
But then you step into the world of applied behavior analysis, and suddenly that massive crowd just vanishes.
It really does.
You aren't looking at 10,000 people anymore. You are looking at one person. And you are being asked to prove, with absolute scientific rigor, that your specific intervention caused their specific behavior to change.
Yes, exactly. Without relying on a control group of 1,000 other people to back you up.
And that tension, how we prove an intervention actually works for an individual rather than a statistical average, is really what we are digging into today.
It's a huge topic.
It is. We are pulling from a really comprehensive stack of behavioral study guides today. Specifically, we're focusing on behavioral intelligence, Mara Sánchez, to master a really critical concept, which is BCBA Foundation's task list item D.5.
Right, the foundations.
Yeah, and if you are new to the field, BCBA stands for Board Certified Behavior Analyst. We are going to figure out the relative strengths of single-case experimental designs versus group designs.
And, this isn't just an academic exercise for passing a multiple-choice test.
Oh, definitely not.
Whether you are prepping for your exam or you are just trying to be a sharper, more analytical practitioner, understanding these research methods is really the bedrock of the field.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Because if a clinician cannot definitively prove that their intervention is the thing causing a behavior to change, they are just operating on assumption. And when you are dealing with real human lives, assumption is dangerous.
Okay, let's unpack this. To really understand these different experimental designs, we first have to understand the core philosophy of this field. Like, why does applied behavior analysis intentionally prioritize the individual over the massive crowd?
That's a great question.
Right. Why throw out the group averages that literally the rest of the scientific world relies on?
Well, it comes down to what is known as an idiographic approach.
Idiographic. Okay.
Yeah. What's fascinating here is that single-case experimental designs, which you'll often see abbreviated as SEEDs.
Right. That's EDs.
Those are built to explore the nature of behavior by understanding how specific individuals behave in specific environments.
Okay, so narrowing it way down.
Exactly. Because behavior is fundamentally a phenomenon that happens at the individual level. I mean, a group doesn't behave.
Oh, that's a good point.
Right. The individuals within the group behave. So rather than trying to describe mathematical averages of large populations, a single-case design actually uses the subject as their own control.
I think about this like buying a suit.
Oh, I like this analogy.
Yeah, so group designs are kind of like buying an off-the-rack suit at a department store.
Sure.
That suit was designed based on the mathematical average of thousands of human bodies. But nobody is actually the exact mathematical average.
Right, no one is perfectly average.
Exactly. You might have slightly longer arms or, broader shoulders. So the off-the-rack suit kind of fits everyone, but it doesn't fit anyone perfectly.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it, actually.
Hmm.
The group data gives you a general shape, but it ignores the nuances of the individual.
Right, whereas a single-case design feels more like going to a master tailor. They don't care about the national average arm length. They only care about your exact dimensions. They measure you, they make a specific adjustment to the fabric, and they see how it fits you.
Exactly. It's custom fitted.
But wait, let me push back on the name itself because I know this trips people up. Doesn't single case literally mean you are only allowed to study one single human being for your entire experiment?
Oh, I hear this all the time.
Right, because that seems like a glaring limitation if you're trying to prove something scientifically.
It is terrible terminology,
Yeah.
honestly, and it creates a very, very common misconception.
Okay, so it's not just one person.
No. Single case does not mean you only have one subject in your study. You can have multiple subjects, 3, 4, or even a dozen.
Oh, wow, okay.
What makes it a single case design is how the data is handled and analyzed. The data for each participant is graphed individually.
Oh, I see.
So you look at participant A's unique response to the intervention over time. Then you look at participant B's response over time. You never lump participant A and participant B together to find an average response.
So you're not blending them into a single data point.
Exactly. You are treating every single participant as their own complete, self-contained experiment.
That makes so much more sense. You are just repeating the tailoring process for each new customer rather than trying to stitch together one giant suit for all of them.
Beautifully put, yes.
So if we understand why we focus on the individual, the next logical hurdle is the mechanics.
Right. How do we actually do this?
Yeah, if I don't have a placebo group of 1,000 people to compare my patient to, how do I actually prove that my tailored intervention caused the change? Let's ground this with a concrete example from the source material.
Perfect.
Let's talk about Amy the trash thrower.
A very classic, straightforward behavioral scenario.
It really is. So let's say Amy drops garbage on the floor a couple of times a day. She just tosses it wherever she happens to be standing.
Yep.
As a behavior analyst, you decide to introduce a token economy. Every time she uses the actual trash can, she gets a token that she can trade in for something she likes.
A classic reinforcement strategy.
Exactly. And suddenly, she stops throwing trash on the floor. Now, the skeptic in the room says, well, how do you know the tokens caused the change? Maybe she just matured. Maybe she had a good week. Maybe the weather changed.
And they would be right to ask that.
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting. How do we prove it was the tokens?
We prove it using something called baseline logic.
Baseline logic.
Yes. The texts break baseline logic down into 3 core dimensions. You've got prediction, verification, and replication.
Prediction, verification, replication. Okay.
Those are the 3 sequential pillars you have to build to establish experimental control in a single case design.
Let's walk through them day by day with Amy. Let's say I'm observing Amy on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday before I introduce any tokens.
Okay, so that is your baseline phase. And the first pillar, prediction, happens right there. You are tracking the data, say 2 pieces of trash on the floor every single day.
So I'm just watching.
Just watching. The prediction is essentially anticipating what will happen if no changes are made to her environment. You predict that if you do absolutely nothing, she will continue throwing trash on the floor twice a day on Thursday and Friday.
Okay, so step 1 is establishing the before picture and predicting it will just stay bad.
Exactly.
But prediction doesn't prove anything. So I introduce the tokens on Thursday.
Now you are entering the intervention phase.
Right.
Let's say Thursday and Friday, she uses the trash can, gets her tokens. The floor is clean.
Success.
Success, yes. But to your earlier point, the skeptic can still say it was a coincidence.
Right. It was just a good couple of days.
This brings us to the second pillar, which is verification.
Verification.
Verification is proving that the behavior wouldn't have changed without the intervention. And the way you do that in a classic reversal design is by actually taking the intervention away.
Just so I'm tracking the jargon here, this is what the texts call an ADAB design, right?
Yes. Okay.
Where A is our baseline, doing nothing, and B is our intervention with the tokens.
Correct. You start with A, baseline. You move to B, intervention. Then to achieve verification, you go back to A. You remove the token system.
Wait, taking the tokens away to see if she starts throwing trash on the floor again?
Yes.
That feels like playing games with her progress. Why would we intentionally make her regress? That sounds totally counterproductive to actually helping her.
It's a fair concern, but it is a temporary removal to establish scientific certainty. If you don't remove the intervention, you cannot verify that the tokens are the functional variable.
I see.
Right? Because if you take the tokens away and she keeps using the trash can, your intervention might not have been the thing controlling the behavior.
Maybe it really was just maturity or the weather?
Exactly. But if you take them away and she immediately goes back to dropping trash on the floor, you have verified your initial prediction. You have shown that the behavior only improves when the tokens are present.
Which brings us to a really fascinating, slightly mind-bending quirk from the text.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
Yeah. The sources talk about the logic behind this entire process, and they call it the affirmation of the consequent.
Yes, they do.
And the text openly admits that this is technically a logical fallacy.
It is a formal logical fallacy, yes.
Let me explain this fallacy because it honestly blew my mind.
Go for it.
It's the logic of, if X is true, then Y is true, therefore X is true.
All right.
Like if it rains, the grass is wet, I look outside and the grass is wet, therefore it rained. But that's a fallacy.
Because there are other possibilities.
Exactly. Maybe the sprinklers were on, maybe a water main broke. So, applied to Amy, it's like, if my tokens work, behavior will change. Her behavior changed, therefore my tokens work. But other things could have caused the change.
Right, the sprinklers could be on, behaviorally speaking.
Right, so if this is a known logical fallacy, how on earth can behavior analysts confidently rely on it to make serious clinical decisions?
You are hitting on the fundamental tension of experimental design right there.
Right.
Doing this once is indeed a fallacy.
Okay.
If you give Amy tokens and she stops throwing trash, it could absolutely be the behavioral equivalent of the sprinklers turning on.
Right.
It could just be a total coincidence.
Right.
And that brings us directly to the third and really the most crucial pillar of baseline logic: replication.
Ah, so you don't just stop after one try.
Precisely. You do not stop at ABA. You do ABA. You turn the behavior on and off like a light switch.
Like a light switch, I like that.
You introduce the tokens, the behavior improves. You take them away, it worsens. You introduce them again, it improves again.
So you're building a pattern.
Yes. Doing it once might be a coincidence. Doing it repeatedly, replicating the effect, builds certainty beyond a reasonable doubt that your independent variable, the tokens, is the actual mechanism controlling the dependent variable, the behavior.
So the replication basically cancels out the fallacy.
Exactly. The logical fallacy is neutralized by systematic replication.
That is brilliant. It's not about being right once. It's about being right consistently over time until the possibility of coincidence drops to zero.
That's the goal.
But this brings up an obvious counterpoint, I think. If single-case designs are so rigorous and they prove control so beautifully for the individual, why do group designs even exist? Like, why does the rest of the scientific world bother gathering 10,000 people for a study if we can just do this?
Because group designs serve a completely different but equally necessary purpose.
Okay.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, group designs are unparalleled when it comes to external validity.
External validity, meaning how well the results apply to the outside world beyond the specific people in the study.
Yes, exactly. Group designs tell us if a treatment works on average across a large, diverse population.
Right.
Imagine you are a state policymaker deciding whether to fund a multi-million-dollar reading program for an entire school district.
That's a lot of money on the line.
It is. And you don't just want to know if it worked perfectly for one kid named Timmy in a highly controlled single-case experiment.
Right. Timmy's great, but what about the other 10,000 kids?
Exactly. You want to know if it works generally for most kids across different schools, under standard, kind of messy conditions. Group designs provide that broad, generalizable knowledge.
But the sources are very quick to point out a massive red flag for group data when you try to apply it to a single clinical patient.
Oh, yes.
There is a phrase from the text that really stood out to me. It says, group data mask variability.
That is perhaps the most important critique of group designs from a behavior analytic perspective.
Yeah.
It is the statistical illusion of the average.
Let me break down what that masking variability actually looks like, because it's kind of scary when you think about it.
It really is.
Imagine a drug trial for a new migraine medication with 100 people. The final group data shows that the medication is 50% effective on average.
Okay.
As a patient, you might hear that and think, okay, cool, my migraines will probably get 50% better. But what if the reality of that data is that for 50 people, the drug completely cured their migraines, like 100% effectiveness?
Yes.
And for the other 50 people, the drug actually made their migraines worse, like 0% effectiveness.
The total failure for them.
Right. The group average balances out to 50%, but nobody in that study actually experienced a 50% reduction. You were either completely cured or you got worse.
And that is exactly how group data masks variability. It represents a statistical average that might not exist in reality for any single person.
The math just completely hides the individual experience.
It does. If a clinician relies only on a group average, they lose the ability to ask the most important question. Why did this specific individual not respond to the treatment?
Right, because the average says they should be fine.
The group average says it should work, but for the patient sitting in front of you, it isn't. Single-case design forces the clinician to look at that specific variability, analyze the individual's environment, and adjust the intervention until it works for them.
You can't just shrug and say, well, the data says it works 50% of the time. Guess you're in the unlucky half.
No, absolutely not.
You have to get the tape measure back out and fix the tailored suit.
You are ethically obligated to fix the suit, yes.
So let's take all this theory and drag it into the real world. How do we apply this in clinical realities, especially when we are dealing with severe behaviors?
This is where it gets really serious.
Yeah, the text sets up a really intense scenario. Let's say a clinician is working with a client who exhibits severe self-injurious behavior, headbanging against a wall. Very dangerous, potentially life-threatening stuff.
Yes.
We just established that an ABAB reversal design, taking the treatment away to see if the behavior comes back, is the gold standard for proving experimental control.
It is the gold standard, generally speaking.
So I should use a reversal design here to prove my intervention works, right?
No, you absolutely should not.
Wait, really?
Yes, this raises an important question about safety versus science, and it is a scenario that trips up a lot of practitioners. You must immediately caution against using a reversal design with dangerous behaviors.
Walk me through the logic there. Because scientifically, I still need to prove my intervention works, right? I mean, I can't just guess.
Scientifically, yes, you need proof.
Right.
But clinically and ethically, think about what a return to baseline actually requires.
Taking the tokens away, so to speak?
Right. It requires you to intentionally remove an effective treatment for a dangerous behavior, just to prove a point on your data chart.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Allowing a client to resume severe head banging, risking concussions or worse, just so you can achieve verification of your independent variable is completely unacceptable. The safety of the individual always supersedes the elegance of the experimental design.
But I'm stuck then. If I can't do a reversal, how do I prove my treatment is the thing reducing the head banging? I still need baseline logic, don't I?
You do, but you achieve it differently. In cases of severe or dangerous behavior, the texts emphasize using a multi-element design.
A multi-element design, okay.
Yes. You'll also hear this called an alternating treatments design.
How does alternating treatments get around the danger of a baseline?
It allows you to skip the extended baseline phase entirely.
Oh, you just skip it.
Essentially, yes. Instead of doing nothing and watching the dangerous behavior occur during a baseline, you can immediately begin comparing different active treatments safely by alternating them rapidly.
Rapidly alternate. Okay,
Yep.
Give me an example of that.
So, for example, you might try treatment A, maybe a differential reinforcement strategy, on Monday morning. Then on Monday afternoon, you try treatment B, maybe a non-contingent reinforcement strategy.
Oh, I see.
You flip back and forth. You are comparing the interventions against each other in real time to see which one drives the dangerous behavior down faster without ever having to withdraw treatment entirely and leave the client vulnerable.
That is such an elegant solution. It proves control because you can see which specific treatment correlates with the lower rates of behavior, but the client is always receiving some form of help.
Exactly. It's a win-win for science and ethics.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground here, and I want to sort of synthesize this into some practical takeaways for you listening. If you are sitting for your BCBA exam, or even just trying to evaluate a study you read online, it sounds like your mental checklist should look something like this.
Let's hear it.
Tip number 1, if a scenario involves a dangerous, self-injurious, or highly aggressive behavior, you should immediately rule out any experimental design that requires a withdrawal to baseline.
Yes.
The answers you're looking for are going to be multivalent or alternating treatments designs.
That is a very solid rule of thumb. Safety dictates the design.
Tip number 2. If you're asked to critique group designs in the context of behavioral science, the fatal flaw you need to look for is that group data mask individual variability. Averages hide the extremes.
Perfect. Yes.
And tip number 3, you need to keep internal and external validity separate in your head. Internal validity is the single case superpower. Did my specific intervention actually cause the change in this specific person? External validity is the group design superpower. Will this intervention generally work for other people out in the real world?
And a truly effective behavior analyst relies on both.
Right.
You read the group research to see what broad interventions are considered evidence-based across populations. That gives you a starting point.
The off-the-rack suit.
Exactly. But then you use your single-case designs to prove beyond a doubt that the intervention is actually working for the specific client sitting in your clinic. It's never an either-or situation in practice.
Before we wrap up today's deep dive, a quick reminder for you listening. If you are looking for more incredible resources on behavioral intelligence con Mara Sánchez, be sure to visit www.amethysttherapyservices.com, or you can reach out directly at info@amethysttherapyservices.com. And stay tuned for our next session where we will be tackling D.6, which is critiquing and interpreting single case data.
That'll be a great one.
It will. So what does this all mean? We started by talking about the massive crowds of clinical trials versus the single individual in ABA. We've looked at baseline logic, the statistical illusions of group averages, and the realities of treating severe behavior safely.
We really ran the gamut
He
today.
did. And what it all boils down to is that while both designs have immense value, behavioral science refuses to let the individual become invisible inside a statistical average.
It does. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over,
Yeah.
something that pushes beyond just behavioral research and into how we view the world. Think about the concept of the average person. We hear about what the average person earns, what the average person eats, how the average person learns,
Right. All the time.
but that such a person actually exists anywhere in the real world. Have you ever met a perfectly average human?
Probably not.
When we design medical treatments or school curriculums or public policies strictly for the average, are we actually designing them for a ghost? It challenges us to completely rethink how we consume all statistical news, not just our clinical data.